It's time to ham up.
Now I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
Welcome everyone to After the Credits, a YumChunks podcast. I'm your host today, Matt Chewy. With me today is Ryan Davis.
Hello.
Sean Davis.
That's me.
And Chris Schmidt.
There's no heroes here.
Oh no. Before we get started, I just want to let you guys all know that in the interest of being timely, we've recorded 2 episodes of After the Credits this week. Today's episode is about The Incredibles 2. We also just recorded an episode on E3. So we're going to be releasing these episodes around the same time. We're not even sure if this is going to be out before or after the E3 episodes. So check your streams, your YouTubes and iTunes or whatever's, and check that one out. See if it's there, or if it's not, it'll be there any second now. So
your feeds are just going to be blowing up.
Yeah,
what is this?
So be on the lookout for that. But as mentioned, today we're going to be talking about Disney Pixar's newest film, The Incredibles 2. But before we get started with that, welcome back, everybody.
Yeah,
how's it going?
Back in.
Yeah, back in action. Let's do our little circle. How are we all doing today? What have been up to? Catch us up in the lives of
not watching Solo. Am I right? High five.
Nobody gave him a high five. Okay, well, Chris hasn't been doing that. What have you been up to, Chris? What's your life like?
Lots of work. Lots and lots of work. E3, as you just stated. I just finished Dragon Ball Super. I finished the whole series. I've watched Arrested Development, Kimmy Schmidt. I beat Detroit Become Human. I've been playing No Heroes Here for the past couple hours. Yeah, that's my life.
Good. Anything in there particularly stand out?
I really like Detroit Become Human.
You done with it?
Yeah, I beat it. Not a huge... I liked both Kimmy Schmidt and Arrested Development, though I'm not a huge fan of this half-season thing that they're pulling on me.
Yeah, it's a bit nonsense. Sean, or Ryan, did you guys watch the...
Yeah.
I watched Kimmy Schmidt.
Arrested Development.
Yeah.
I'm not as, upset about the split thing. I mean, obviously I want more of it because I love it. But I'm not sure, is it just a marketing thing? Is that why they're splitting this up? Or what's the deal with that?
I really don't know. Just in general, as far as the rest of the development goes, I just don't know
it is kind of weird, though, because, spoiled's not the right word, because it's just a different format for how television's released now, but we're so used to Netflix shows just, the entire season.
Yeah.
But, TV, we would have to watch a year for, or a whole week just to watch another episode. So it's already funny that... I can't watch 4 more episodes immedially. Table flip, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I don't understand that. I do understand that. But.
It's weird because Netflix, when Netflix streaming started, they started putting these giant backlogs of shows that already existed and were finished airing, and then the binge watch kind of was a new thing that's kind of sprung up in the last decade or so. And now studios are finding themselves having to create this content with the binge watch in mind. So it's a shift. It's a little weird. Even 9 episodes is not enough somehow.
It's geez, sorry guys. We just put out 4 hours of content for you
not enough. Nope.
Hey, I waited so many years for this new season of Arrested Development. It's not fair that I don't get my...
But I heard that one, they're both of them, but they're supposed to be before the end of the year, the second half of the season, right? So it's not even that long of a wait.
Is it?
I could be wrong, but I thought Arrested Development was September or November or something like that.
To be honest, I have no idea what's going on in this season. This is
I haven't watched the last 2 episodes, so I haven't actually finished the season.
I think the season's a little weird.
It's a little weird, but
it's my least favorite so far. We'll see. Let's see how the season turns out. But of all 5 of them, this is my least so far. Favorite. Yeah. What else have you been up to?
What else have you been up to? I've been playing... I also been playing Detroit. I also play Hollow Knight. Just came... If you listen to our E3 episode, came out on the Switch. That game is super fun.
Why'd
I
you do
recommend
that,
it.
but not at the mic?
I did. I like
No,
this.
you did it like at you.
Oh, I don't know. I like to make gestures that no one else could pick up on. Hollow Knight is really good. It came out last year, but it just came out on the Switch. I highly recommend it. Super fun, Metroidvania style, but just a lot of fun platformer. Been playing that and the Octopath Traveler demo. Again, recommendations that I have already recommended from the V3 episode, but
Good, go check it out.
go
For
check it
expanded.
out.
You'll
Yes.
keep recommending them
Yes.
until you play it.
Yes.
And do what
Also,
he says.
I started reading the Sword of Truth series, which is a classic fantasy, if anyone is familiar. Terry Goodkind.
Heard the name, and that's all.
I just started, so I can't really place judgment. But that I've embarked on that.
Oh, I finally finished book 2 of the Mistborn series.
Oh,
I did
yeah.
do that too.
Did you?
I like the epilogue of it a lot more than I liked any other part of it.
I don't remember the epilogue specifically, but
That's where literally everything happens
Oh.
in a couple pages. It's like, and now things start happening.
Wow, that doesn't sound like a good book at
the
all.
second half, the end was pretty exciting. The whole assault on the city and stuff, and then her fight.
Except I think I've already described this to you that it felt like Dragon Ball Z, right? It felt
I
like that
suppose.
Goku thing where she's like, I'm at my limit, but I'll just keep going.
I guess I don't.
I'm okay with that.
I don't
well,
like that
without
so
getting
much.
too much in the mechanics, I thought it was stupid about the atrium thing. If anyone else out there reads that series, that was kind of completely against the point of what that metal is supposed to do.
Though I do like
Yes.
using the term pewter drag to mention just in everyday conversation now. You know?
Drag. Yeah.
Well, like
That's some good
if you're
lingo.
worn down, right? I was just like, man, I feel like I've pewter dragged or whatever. Not that I expect anybody to
all
ever
the
catch
kids
that
in the future, they'll all be
Yeah.
saying that. Hashtag pewter drag.
Yeah.
Speaking of books, I started and I'm almost done with the first book in the Wheel of Time series. That's a
Some more
major
classic fantasy.
Yeah.
What else have you been up to?
Yeah, mostly I went to E3, obviously. But in terms of media, I watched a lot of horrible Netflix films. I want to almost do another episode just on all the straight to
Horrible
Netflix.
Netflix.
I don't understand.
There's been a lot that I've been meaning to watch, and it's so hit and miss because there are actually some that I do like, but I've watched a handful that are just like, oh, what was that?
Right? Yeah, I feel like there's just so much out there. You really have to search for these hidden gems,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of striking out in that regard. I just made this list of all the ones I watched, and it feels weird that they're I don't know, they get lost in the weeds, or it's like they're only half films, or they gave up 3/4 of the way making it, and they decided let's release
It's
it.
been a little while, but I watched this sci-fi. It was with what's her name, Naomi Rapace, and she plays a set of septuplets, and they're each named after a day of the week. And it's whatever happened to. It's called Whatever Happened to Monday. Or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
I want to watch that one.
It was not very good.
Dang it!
It's it's a really interesting premise. It's in the future you can't have siblings because the resources of Earth. So it's against the law. Only one child per household, or something along those lines. And then this family gives birth to 7 identical septuplets. So they each are given a day of the week where they could go out, and they all have to live the same life. That's a really cool premise. It's really really heady, sci-fi. This is exactly what sci-fi is made for. And then it's just a bad movie, and it's
Oh no!
Willem Dafoe's in it, and it's it's you could tell they filmed all of his stuff in 3 days. Okay, we filmed the Willem Dafoe stuff. Now let's film everything else. And she's really, I like her as an actress really good, but the film.
Yeah.
He was in another terrible straight to Netflix film.
I feel like they have
That
contracts with a lot of these actors.
That American Death Note movie, William Dafoe was in
I
there.
never
So.
saw
Oh,
that, but I heard it was bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, just to name a few. Win It All, Outsider with Jared Leto, Anon.
I wanted to watch that
That
one.
one, again, they're okay, I'm with you so far, where's this going? This is interesting, and then just, fizzles.
Yeah.
American Hero had Steven Dorff, which I haven't seen him in a movie in a while. I like him.
Blade.
And, in Blade, he has psychic powers. You're okay, cool. And then they doesn't do anything with him. It's lame.
I haven't heard that one.
But we did go see Les Mis at the.
Oh, that's
Civic.
right.
So that's
And
some
then
legit.
our family we went to see live. If we do plays, we do. We talked all about Shrek.
Yeah, I got play stuff to talk about here.
So
Yeah.
we're play news. No, I don't know.
Just
Les
see
Mis
what you've been
is-
up to. Yeah.
Les Mis
Yeah.
is
You saw
still a
the
play.
what is it, the professional touring?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the one they had just come from. I don't know where.
I forgot.
I have
but-
still not seen the professional production.
Well,
of that
this
show.
was I
thought it was really
it was
good.
really good. This is I think the 4th time I've seen it
Yeah.
live professional,
Mhm.
and I will say it was really good. And as many times as I've seen it, I sit down and starts like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like cynical and jaded, and then pretty quickly I'm like super into it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, I got this, like wins me over every time. But this performance was actually interesting to me, is the set design of that play is really amazing. At least in the one I've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Where every other performance though, it's been this rotating set thing, where like it's like rotating
Like a
and
big disc.
it's a big disc. With this one, they
Called the
didn't.
turntable set.
Yeah, turntable set where it's constantly, and it
Or
does a
Lazy
really good
Susan.
job. Yeah.
In the professional.
No, in class I say, when I describe a turntable set, I just imagine a giant lazy Susan. So
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
very much. But this one did not have that, is
Oh.
what I was saying.
Right,
So
it
it
did
was the
not.
first time I had seen that.
Shrek the musical on Broadway did have that,
Oh, man.
and at the Moonlight.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are they going to do Les Mis at the
I-
Moonlight?
I think I have before.
Have
but-
they?
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah. Well, back when Moonlight did Shrek, I had to help with that
Okay.
turntable, and I mean the thing is, it's probably the same with Les Mis. We had to build the stage up a whole full like foot and a half.
Oh,
like you install
yeah.
the turntable
And then
onto
all
the
the
stage,
platforms.
And you
and
just
then
build the stage up
you have
around
to
it.
build up around it, so
Yeah.
you're raising the whole stage level,
Yeah.
and then underneath there's the whole like belts and motor system
So
that
does-
goes off.
So doesn't the ceiling get shorter
That's
then?
what Les Mis lives.
I mean, yes, it,
So you have to raise the roof,
down,
what you're saying.
look down.
yeah, you
There's,
do.
there's
Yeah,
Chewie behind him with a whip.
Sorry, we had two
All
comments.
right, in the next life, yeah, for you listeners.
My joke wasn't very good in the first place. So
Yeah, it's okay.
for listeners, that's going to be confusing.
yeah, I think you said something about me here again. Okay, boy, oh boy, editor, you're gonna have to clean this section.
Oh
up.
no!
All right. Well, speaking of
Anyways,
theater,
lots of
I just finished school. We're out of school for the summer, so I just finished teaching this term. So I've transitioned over into my other job. I work in a sort of regional theater in San Diego, and we just opened Mamma Mia. So I just been working on the lights, and then I just went to go see that. It's a really good production. I'm not super into ABBA, but I'll tell you, I've never seen so many disco balls in one place. If you go on stage and you just look up,
Yeah.
disco balls everywhere. There are probably about 20, 25 disco balls in the show. So if you ever want to just see a ton of disco balls in one place, if that's something that is a priority to you,
You went? I'm sold.
okay,
Yeah,
great.
it
Let's
was
do
a
an
priority.
episode on disco balls.
Great, excellent. Yeah, it's a good production. I got to chaperone grad night, which was really cool. It was at Disneyland.
Oh,
And it was
okay.
another thing, I never went to my own grad night, but I got to chaperone grad night and went to Disneyland. I haven't been to Disneyland in over a year and a half, which for me is a long time because I used to be a pass holder, so I used to go every month, or if not more. So that was, and I didn't have to pay, which was pretty cool. But there was a good little backlog of things that I hadn't seen before, but the main highlight for me was Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. I don't know if any of you guys have checked that out.
No, I haven't actually checked it out yet.
It
I
used
heard
to-
good things.
It used to be the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And if you watch Masology, I've done a whole video on Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And what do you do? What do you?
That was me falling. Like,
Oh, okay.
that was me on the
Where
ride.
Chris just randomly throwing his arms up and he just looked like a complete weirdo, even in context. It still didn't make any sense. I did a whole episode about Twilight Zone Tower of Terror and the differences between the California and the Florida one, and how the California one is kind of not like the not as good one. But it's really cool because like I like seeing that Marvel like creeping its way into the other arms of Disney, particularly the theme parks, and now we don't have to compare our version of the ride to the better Florida
So
one.
that whole episode is completely pointless now. Is what
It really
you're
is
saying.
actually. Now I'm like when they did that. Well, the thing is, this Guardians makeover has been around now a little while. They were getting ready to open that like right before my pass expired. But so it's kind of old news here. But I was like, dang it, I gotta make a whole other Tower of Terror episode. That was terrible timing. But yeah, I love seeing just the overwhelming Marvel presence. Like because the ride is themed to the Collector from the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and when you walk in, it's his fortress, and all the little boxes that are all over the place are remnants from like every Marvel movie. So there's like an Ultron head that's like flickering, and then there's like Chitauri weapons, and there's all these creatures. There's stuff from like Asgard, and there's all these different things. So I feel like it's a good first introduction to putting Marvel stuff in the Disney theme parks because by the nature of the story, it was a good way to kind of put
like everything.
a ton of Marvel all in one place. And I don't know. I think this is better than the Tower of Terror in almost every way. And I know there was a lot of people who are skeptical about it, but I I was really impressed with what they were able to do with what they had to work with. So,
Awesome.
yeah, strong recommendation. Chaperoning.
Everyone go
300
chaperoning Chewy's high school.
300 seniors
Grad
and
night.
getting them all back on a school bus at 3 a.m. is not as good of a time as writing Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, but, you know.
I mean, do you really have to take all of them back? Like, who's counting?
I mean, they've all graduated. They're not
Exactly, that's
technically
why
our
it's like-
students anymore.
They're adults now.
They don't want to come back to the bus. That's fine. They earned that. They got their diploma. That's what I've been up to. No, that's all I've been up to. I'm going to relinquish hosting duties to Sean.
Okay. I didn't ask for this. It's been thrust upon me.
Well,
She was just being a responsible host.
look. Honestly, I'm out, and
Out of what?
He
Out?
flew too
You're
close to the
leaving?
sun. He's riding the edge too hard.
Sean's got the book of notes in front of him, so I feel like this is a good time.
But my thoughts on the movie, though. You don't need to know my thoughts, dude. I'm fine.
That's the only way he was able to get through the
I don't
last
even think it
episode.
matters. We're all equal in the eyes of the pod.
Lord.
Yeah, it's a pun, right? Damn it, I just lost my hosting duties because
All right,
of
Chris,
that
you're
bad
up.
pun.
All right.
What are we talking about today, Chris?
We're talking about no heroes here.
What are we talking about today, Ryan?
Bao?
Okay, well,
Okay,
About a
let's start
small
on that.
Asian boy who grows...
Okay, so
let's actually talk about that.
Okay, well,
Okay, let's
before we
start
get into Incredibles 2, because all Pixar films start with a short film, and the short film for this one was a short film called Bao.
Boy, oh boy.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, so, just initially, yeah, it was cute and fine and all this stuff, whatever. But, was anyone else completely, confused? So the whole time I thought the main character is a 12-year-old boy. Did anyone else think that?
No.
Really?
Yeah, no, I thought it was an old woman.
No, why? It looked like a 12-year-old boy.
Why would you think it was the thing that it was, Chewie? Why?
I didn't think that was gonna. I didn't think that was what you were gonna ask. I thought you were gonna ask something about whether or not that doughboy, what kind of a relationship exactly had with that adult human woman.
No.
If you catch my drift.
No, I do.
Oh, I
catch
guess
the
I get
drift.
it now. Why, though?
but
knowing that, why would you question that? She was like, it was like her son. But okay, so it's that character model, that character design of that character, it was completely androgynous, first of all, right? So there was nothing that said it looked like a 7-year-old woman. What? Why is no one answering my questions?
I know it's just funny to rethink about that whole short.
But it makes perfect sense
about
up
the old
until the
lady
last
as a
30
man.
seconds.
Yeah, little boy.
So the whole thing made complete perfect sense until the last 30 seconds. And I'm like, what? What just happened? And it was like a surprise twist that wasn't even intended for me alone, I guess. Okay, because I just thought it was, okay, a 7-year-old grandfather and his 12-year-old grandson, who is a loner. He cooks for his grandpa when his grandpa goes out to work. He's a loner, he cooks, and then he makes a little friend. He doesn't have any other friends, and he has a friend now. And they go do things, and he becomes a friend. And it's the kids outside, they show the contemporaries, they're young kids playing soccer, and like why would it show young kids? He looks out the window like a young boy who doesn't have any other friends. In their house, they show like family pictures. And I understand now that it's the grandmother, but there's a little kid in that picture. And I thought, that boy, okay, that's the little kid. And his grandmother died. It's just him and his grandfather are left. And then he makes this little friend. And then the friend wants to have other friends. So he gets so angry that he eats his friend, which is makes more sense as a 12-year-old boy than a 7-year-old
What
woman
the
eating
heck
the
is
thing.
going on right now?
And then at the end, it finds out the 12-year-old boy is married to the 7-year-old weird guy.
Because it's not a 12-year-old boy, it's an old woman who misses her son.
I understand that now, but I'm saying like there's no indication of that.
Look,
the
Sean,
whole film.
did that blonde woman have sexual relations with that dumpling? Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
God dang it.
that's exactly
I
what
mean,
happened.
we're all agreed on that point, I think.
Yeah, there's no contention there.
Okay, look, any of misunderstanding aside, Sean, you clearly misunderstood, and you're clearly the
I'm
minority
just
on
saying
this
that.
one.
But I really,
You
why
are
did
clearly
you?
alone
Why
in
did
this
you think that?
situation.
Why did you think that it was his wife?
Because it looked... I don't know. I read it the way it was supposed to be read.
I mean, I'm not pretending that I'm in any way right. I'm just like, what beat did I miss? That's what I'm curious about.
So for me, it wasn't necessarily anything visual. It was all the behavioral elements of that character towards the dumpling. They were very motherly, not friend-y. Because like she licks her thumb and wipes the smudge off his face. That is something exactly the stereotypical.
I mean, I took it more like
behavior.
a pet, like a little boy has a pet dog, and to me, there was it likened it to that behavior.
Well, and also, it's the whole like mother having a son growing up. The son doesn't want to have anything to do with it. It's visual storytelling, which Pixar is so good. You know, the sketch reminded me of the beginning of Up. Really?
Yeah.
Because it's just because of the passage
of time.
Well,
I mean, now it does. Well, even then, because I thought it was a 12-year-old boy.
Well, look, Sean, I don't know what to tell you, man. I think you're.
I'm not pretending that I'm right. I'm just saying. I'm just confused, and it's just like, how could I have missed like the whole thing? Okay. The other thing that is interesting, completely unrelated to that specifically, but is it true that none of the Pixar shorts have dialogue? I was just thinking about this.
I don't know.
Right?
That might be true.
I can't think of one.
Now that I think about it.
And I wonder if that's something that they intentionally like, okay, you have to, it's all visual storytelling, which would be a really cool thing. Like, I'm really interested to know, like, if that's like an insider rule. If you're making a Pixar short, there's certain guidelines that it has to adhere to.
I'm going to pull up a list of Pixar shorts.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I can't think of any. Unless you're going with like,
Bounden has dialogue. It has narration.
Is that Magic?
No, Bounden is the one with the prairie dog. That was the beginning of Incredibles 1, if you remember.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that was a musical. It was a song.
Oh.
Day and Night has dialogue. That's the one where it's 2D animation. It was in front of Toy Story 3.
Yeah, I remember
That's
that
the one where there was day and night, and they were hand-drawn, but the stuff happening inside their bodies was 3D animation. That one, I believe, had... but I don't think the characters were speaking. I think it was like
narration?
Recorded narration or like stock.
Yeah, that's kind of different.
Audio.
I feel like Lava had dialogue, didn't it?
I don't think
Lava had a
song.
Yeah, it had a song. But I guess if we're talking about
by
like,
dialogue, I mean the characters
speaking
to each other.
No, the only ones that do are the ones that are offshoots of the original movies, like they did Mike's New Car for
or the
Monsters
Frozen short and stuff.
Well, that's not Pixar, that's out of there. Yeah. I think they've done shorts that were kind of like mini sequels to all of their movies, but I cannot remember if any of those have been released theatrically before a Pixar movie, or if those are all straight to DVD. Okay. So I think for the most part,
maybe one or two, but for
the most part, pretty much almost all of them, if not all of them. You're right. You don't have characters specifically speaking to each other within the world of the.
I just thought it was really kind of cool and interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did everybody in the theater was shocked when she ate?
Yeah,
it was great.
Everyone was like, "Oh!" and then everyone just started laughing.
Yeah, yeah, that was amazing. That was incredible.
That was good.
All right. But all in all, pretty good. Yeah, pretty solid.
Actually, I didn't really like it that much.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
It wasn't my favorite, wasn't my least favorite by far. Okay. It was in the middle. Even after massively misunderstanding it completely, I still thought it was okay.
Okay, that's fine.
It's probably one of my favorites. I really liked it.
Well, good. There you go. Yeah!
For me, it was this kind of like shoving the whole like mother family thing right before a movie that was all about that too. I was just kind of like, all right, that's enough, Disney.
I've noticed that there's been a trend of the short having some kind of narrative connectivity to, like one, I remember La Luna was in front of Brave. Do you remember that was the one where the kid was on the moon and there was the dad and the grandpa that were like, this is how you should clean stars. And the kid's like, I'm a new generation. I do things my way. And then that's what Brave was about.
Yeah.
And there's been there's at least
I get a sense that might be also like a potential guideline when making, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just imagine like when you're making a Pixar short and you have a creative team, they know that there's certain standards they're working with. And that could be one of them. Like, this is what the main thing is about. Tying it in thematically is actually probably not a bad idea.
Sometimes it's a visual tie-in. I remember there was the one with the cloud people that was in front of Up.
Yeah. And Lava was in front of... Moana, right? Well, Moana's not Pixar. What was in front of that? I thought it was in front of something.
I think it was Finding Nemo 2.
It just like it felt like some watery...
Well, what was the last one? Cars? I didn't see Cars 3.
I didn't see that either.
It was something because I saw
Lava,
Vince.
but I didn't see Cars 3. So
and it couldn't. Yeah, exactly.
Well, whatever. Super quick.
Monsters University.
No, it might have been
maybe.
I don't know. I guess there's not a big
Inside Out.
Oh.
There you go.
Maybe that was
I
maybe
don't
it
know
was
what the
just like the
connection is there.
personification of weird, like abstract ideas or like notions or something.
Sanjay's super team was in front of Good Dinosaur.
Never
I
saw
didn't
that.
like the level one.
I didn't like the level
I
one.
liked it because I like it was it was about IZ and I like that performer. He's dead now, but
Yeah,
I like him.
you can still be about him.
Yeah, it's
Even though
okay.
he's dead.
It's okay.
All right. Well, anyways,
Let's move
good.
on to the
Bow.
main
We
event.
moved past Bow. Okay, so we're gonna start talking about Incredibles 2. Spoilers. Don't listen. Spoilers. Blah blah blah. Plot. You know. the
Great.
deal.
Should we give him first impressions or?
Yeah. So Incredibles 2. Well, what do people think? Did people like this, and how much more or less than Incredibles 1?
I freaking loved it.
Okay.
I'm gonna just lay it all out here on the table. I cannot remember the last time I was sitting in a movie theater and enjoyed a movie this much.
Really?
Wow.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It's the best superhero movie I've seen in a long time. I laughed a lot. I was excited the whole time. I thought the pacing was great. It expanded on things that I liked to the first one. However, after 2 days of thinking about it, I realized that there are a couple of plot things that really, really bother me. And, they don't retroactively take away how I feel about the movie. And I feel like if I watch it again, I would still get all of that enjoyment. But I feel like primarily my main gripe, aside from a couple of little small things, is that the motivation of the antagonist does not make any sense at all. The more and more I think about it, the more, frustrated I get that character was not as developed as the antagonist in the first movie, which I had just rewatched the night before. The first movie has always been tied between that and Ratatouille as my favorite Pixar movie. It's a situation where I watch one and I go, that's my favorite. And then I watch the other one and go, wait, no, that's my favorite. So Incredibles 1 set the bar really high. I think this one almost made it. And I think that with some rewrites and I think with some more thought into that character's backstory, could have cleared that bar. Just shy of it, though.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually really, really enjoyed it as well. I definitely liked it more than the first. And I do have the same problem with the character. After it kind of is all revealed, I'm like, wait, what? Why does she do this? I'm not sure if this is really sticking together for me. And but I agree with you. I don't think that really detracted from the film. Overall, I'm trying to think if it was as funny or funnier than other Pixar films. There's two key moments for me that I think at least my audience was laughing for 5 minutes after the scene or the event occurs, and I don't even know what happened in that part of the film, which is a good thing. I want to see it again anyway. I really liked it.
I thought it was all right. It was definitely good. I just feel like it was almost a carbon copy of the first film in almost every way. Especially plot points.
I think
way it plays out is almost identical to the first movie.
I think from a plot structure standpoint.
Which isn't a huge attraction, but it's just
it made it, I don't want to say predictable because there's a negative connotation to that, but it was predictable.
It was,
very
because you knew the villain
familiar,
reveal.
right?
The villain thing was going to work out the same way, and it did.
Yeah.
So I agree. That was a shortcoming.
And all in all, I expected more from Jack's character. I don't know.
Well, okay, so this is going to be an interesting, because I actually think I agree more with Chris. At least,
All right,
I know.
Smackdown.
Okay,
Let's do this.
Okay,
Yeah!
But let it be said that I don't think Chris and I dislike the film by any means.
No.
In fact, I bet we both actually like it.
Yeah.
Or I know we both like it. I guess, to me, what it was amazingly well made. The action was all really fun. I will say that it wasn't as funny as I was hoping, but that in of itself doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it. But in a lot of ways, it felt just like a really long, well-made episode of television. You know what I mean? What's your favorite? A really good classic TV cartoon, like DuckTales, whatever, right?
Sure,
I felt like if they made an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie, this is what that would have been. And when we get into more discussion, I'll get into some of my bigger questions that kind of just never really satisfactorily answered, in my opinion. But the predictability, I do think that it just made it. I wasn't. You were saying on your edge of your seat. For me, I didn't have that same feel.
As soon as the antagonist walked on the screen, I knew that's who it was.
I mean, I won't pretend like I knew immediately, but it was pretty clear.
I mean, I knew
Yeah,
immediately, and
yeah.
I was hoping I was wrong.
Me too.
Well, I guess the better way to put it is that when the reveal happened, I went, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah, that's kind
Yeah,
of what
and
I
it
was.
was the only question was: Are they? Was it the both siblings or just her?
That's
That was
what-
the only
that
question.
was the
read.
question
Like,
I
it was
had.
like, is he
Because
about
I
it?
think they were they weren't necessarily banking, but I think the predictability was that it was going to be both of them, or at least he
Yeah.
would be in on it.
Right.
So I think they kind of like it's a little subverting a little bit without him being in on it.
Well, if you are okay with, if you don't, unless you have anything else you want to say about your feelings about the movie, I'd like to open up that point of conversation because that's my biggest
Yeah, no, definitely.
talking point. Is okay. So the villain reveal being there's the Bob Odenkirk character, and then the Catherine Keener character, their brother and sister, and she was the one behind this. But okay, so her motivation is to make superheroes illegal. Superheroes are already illegal at the beginning of this movie.
What is she trying? I didn't. Yeah.
So, like, you got this thing, you got this whole thing where she's created this screenslaver character because of whatever. Because she needs to...
Yes.
For her plot to unfurl, she needs to create this character. And when they introduce this character, before we know that it's a fake out, he's talking about how, like, the public, they're consumers.
Yes.
They're sheep. And everything we experience is through television. Nothing's real. But, it's not really that fresh of a take. Like, we've seen... we've seen that before, but I feel like if they had committed to a villain who had that motivation and doubled down on it, that would have been more interesting than what we ended up getting.
Yeah.
Because I think her motivation being like, oh, a superhero didn't save my parent, my dad, or my mom, whatever it was. It felt so. I don't feel like where she was, like her background would have led her to that point.
I think a lot of it was one of the biggest issues was that I feel like they didn't resolve a lot of ideas and to a certain extent some like subplots and even characters. They didn't have payoff for a lot of what we had built up. And I think like the villain's motivation was the big thing. Like both of those are really good ideas and I wish they would have explored either one of them more fully.
Right.
And as much as I love Incredibles 1, Syndrome is probably my favorite part of
Absolutely.
right? Like
yes.
Because he presents a really good it reminds me even of Korra, right? Like the best villain like Zahir and so like the best villains represent ideas that you agree with in a lot of ways. Like and not you know what I'm saying? Like
but the thing is that you can it's not so much I agree because I hate Syndrome. As a character, but I love him as a character.
Yes,
like
that's my point.
He's such a well-written character, and just those people exist.
Yeah,
they're all over Reddit. Like those people exist, and these guys that have this like 13-year-old minded that like have this weird warp twisted like I'm the victim, so I got to be the whatever. Right. But he has a lot of money, and he's and so he's able to act on his stupid man boy fantasies, and it's this scary person because those people exist, and it's not only just that he's got that whole idea about how like if everyone's super nobody's super, right? That ties into what's going on with the family dynamic, and so the whole movie feels like it's this cohesive idea. Not true in this one.
That's why I felt like they presented these ideas that weren't explored like in the way I want themes to be explored, where every character or a different encounter is a different take on that theme.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I felt like a lot of like, wait, how does that really tie into with the, I mean, for lack of a better term, message, right? Because I think kid movies notoriously are just like, it's just for kids, but Pixar has always bucked that trend. Pixar has always had a clear, like meaningful, impactful message, a statement, something they wanted to say. And I think with this one, I think that there is still that. I just don't think it's as clear, or at the very least, it's muddled and
you got
they don't actually resolve. They don't really present it.
You got well-made puzzle pieces, but you're like hitting them with a hammer to fit them together. Like you got a lot of good stuff going on. You've got the Helen is the working mom and the stay-at-home dad, and you got and one of the things I appreciated about the first one were the family dynamics, but in this fantastical setting. And I think they did that again well. But again, it doesn't. It feels like, and maybe this is where you get the whole like Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it, is that a lot of the pieces feel like pieces.
Yeah,
is really what it is.
Like I think one of the, just in terms of the characterizations, I thought kind of represented one of my problems with it was like Dash, right?
Mhm.
His character didn't have an arc,
Yeah.
and there were like
He just screaming the whole time.
he just kind of was there.
I was really
and then
disappointed by that.
I was hoping like even the math, like the math will play in at the end somehow. And that was no things like that where I felt like if it like I was expecting a little bit more, just kind of clever payoffs for a lot of these setups or character resolutions and. So when that didn't happen, maybe I'm spoiled because I was expecting too much. But it just felt like, oh, okay, I guess it's just a fun. They had a fun action scene, and he's done now. You know,
Sure,
he
right.
doesn't need to.
Yeah, I felt actually I was a little disappointed by that character. Even though in the first one I kind of found him annoying, I was kind of like let down. Like, oh, I wanted to see him more.
Yes,
like,
he had an arc
using
in the
his
first.
power.
He definitely had an arc and
Right.
tied into the whole family stuff. And as much as there was still that strong family dynamic and it being about that, I just felt like the individual pieces, like even Violet to an extent, didn't feel like she was more of a presence, but I felt her character was less strong. If that makes sense, I don't know.
Right.
And like you mentioned, Jack, like he took up a lot of screen time, and for the most part, it was entertaining, and I liked it. But like ultimately, I don't know what they were saying with that character. Like, what was the purpose of it other than it being viscerally entertaining?
Right, and I think that was one of my major concerns about the film is that they're going to spend like, oh, everyone loves babies. I'm like, well, except for me.
I hate babies.
I hate babies.
They're the worst.
And Jack's going to be this annoying character that's going to eat up a bunch of screen time.
Sorry to any babies listening.
Yeah. And well, that ended up being true for the most part. Although I will say the scenes with him ended up being more entertaining and enjoyable than I
Yes.
would have thought.
I did actually like the raccoon scene a lot.
Yeah.
And in terms of specifics, they did set up like specific like set up payoff in terms of like his emotion and his abilities. So that's fine. I'm talking bigger picture stuff.
Sure.
Right, like I would have. Let's use some of that screen time to develop a character that's a character,
Yeah.
like Dash at least, or someone. Or heck, even like the villain. Give this villain a little more charisma or personality. Like, never mind. Like we kind of talked about her motivations and that kind of thing. But I mean, think about Syndrome. He is just loud and in your face on the camera. He has all kinds of charisma. And I like a villain with charisma. And this, I'm like, she's just kind of like a blah. And that's kind of her. That was her character.
As far as that being a character, as far as her personality, I was actually okay with that because I don't want Syndrome again.
No,
but I feel like fixing her motivation would fix her character more because then we would excuse more about like how she presented herself because we would be able to get more on her side and identify with what her deal is. And
I mean,
whatnot,
I find it interesting you brought up, just like superheroes are already illegal, right?
Right.
Because she did have one line that I really liked, which I think was when she was arguing with her brother, when he's like, well, what do you think Dad should have done? And she was just like, he should have gone into the freaking panic room with Mom, like any sane person would have done. That is motivation that I wanted to see. Like that was a powerful line.
I got like that. We'll get, like I had a lot of notes on that too, and I that's what I mean. Whereas I liked that, but it wasn't enough. And not only was it not enough per se, but it just felt like, oh, the movie's over. Wait, how did you resolve all of this like interpersonal
They
and
resolved
character
it by
stuff?
all of the superheroes standing on the monorail track with sunlight coming from
yeah,
behind
like
them
that's
in a
what
heroic
that's what I
pose.
mean. Like it was just very like, oh, Saturday morning cartoon, everything's fine. It's like you just presented some kind of like stuff that we should think about more, don't you think?
But it wasn't.
No? Okay.
Well, yeah, because the heroes can't win just by punching the bad guy in the face enough. They have to win by winning the theme and the moral conflict.
That's what I'm saying, but I didn't
and
feel
they don't
they
do
did
that. And they
That's
didn't
what
do
I'm
that.
saying.
Also, partially because I don't think like the conflict was set up well enough in the first place. Like,
That's
I don't know what the problem is here, and so I also now I don't know. Did they solve it
or not? Did we win? Everyone's smiling.
Well, they went to jail.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Superheroes are legal now.
And even it was kind of murky because, like, at the end, the brother's like, we'll keep an eye on him. Like, why? He's fine, right? Is he bad now? Like, wasn't there some, like, weird, ambiguous line? Like, I don't know about that guy.
Yeah. And
like, what do you mean? Why? He's fine. He gave you a house and saved you, and he didn't know it. Like, but they had some weird line. Like,
but again, how did he get this far in his, like, how did he get this far in his business and in his goal to bring superheroes back, working with somebody whose direct goal is completely the opposite for however many years. I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
Especially he was using her technology to help motivate those ends, right? Like that.
Right.
So why was she helping him?
Yeah.
Did she plan? Did she plan on Elastigirl coming to her and saying, "Hey, can you make me a machine that will help me find your puppet that you?" And then her going, "Yeah, yes, because that's part of my plan." Did she plan on that?
And also keep in mind that this is all immediately after the events of Incredibles 1,
Right.
which at that point they don't even know that they're around any, like, the general public doesn't really even know that they're a thing.
Because they all been in hiding for
They're
a
all
long
been in
time.
hiding, but they still know because they just came out, I guess, and so she devised they're back again? They're still legal, but I don't know, whatever. It's plot stuff that doesn't really make sense.
Right?
I say we're sounding like we're ragging on it a lot more than I think we
Let me
maybe
reiterate.
intended to.
I freaking loved this movie. I honestly
No,
did.
I did as well.
How much time do
Just
you
doesn't make any
think
sense.
passes in this movie?
I'd say like a week,
I would say probably a few weeks.
maybe a few weeks.
Man, he was broke down. He was a broke down man.
Who, the dad?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think
guess.
that only took a day.
Yeah, I think that was only a day.
Right.
Some things I like. So I will say my favorite, I think, sequence or at least scene was basically the midpoint of the film when she goes and finds Screenslaver.
Mhm.
That whole like her hunting him down in his lair and that action scene of her chase. Like, I don't know why, but I really, really like that sequence. I think visually and just the tone of it, it almost got like. It got surprisingly creepy.
Yeah,
it was
like
creepy.
when
When
it's kinda
she's
scary.
like looking through like the hand, and he's like, it's just his mask standing there,
Yeah.
and then the fight scene in the flashing screen room, like it's
Yeah.
just really, really cool visuals and stuff. And then even when they're chasing him, like it wasn't a normal chase scene because like he's running through a crowd, and there's just like a
She's got to like jump
apartment
over
building and stuff. Like it's not like this
she's
fast
elasticing
paced
up stairs and stuff.
It just had a really
It was
weird,
very well choreographed, and I think overall a lot of the action scenes.
Yeah.
Like, God, why can't they do that in a Fantastic Four movie?
Yeah, it is funny, like, how incredible the Incredibles films are when it's the same characters. I mean, they're not, but similar to the Fantastic Four films, which all are awful.
I think, yeah, okay.
No, I was gonna say like, well, yeah, one of my favorite parts of the film is this like their ability to use their like powers in creative ways, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's this whole like world building built around like the different powers, and like it just shows. Like, Elastigirl is like this, hailed as like this very, like, one of the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because she has a very simple power, but she just knows how to use it so creatively. Mm-hmm. And that's why all those other superheroes are kind of considered second class, because they're noobs and they just don't know how to use, like, I use my power to juggle this cup, right? But you have portals! You should be the most powerful.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of my favorite scenes was because, like, her name was Void, the portal one, when she was trying to catch who was it? Elastigirl in the air,
and she kept
missing.
Yeah,
I love that
because I love that scene. It just shows you, like, she's a second class superhero. She doesn't really know how to use her powers.
Also, because it also bothers me in movies when like people with powers like they get it right on the first try.
Oh yeah,
like as if this is super easy.
Right.
And she's like, "Yeah, cool, you can open and close portals," but just like doing some crazy maneuver to get it. Like, it was that was one of the. This is so awesome. And then just like how, they introduced all this whole new team of guys with wacky different powers. Mm-hmm. But I thought Elastigirl was a standout, and I really think that they were really clever with how they used their powers and made some really cool action set pieces.
The whole bike stuff was really
I
cool.
love
the bike separated.
Well, at first, like when the bike separated, like what is this doing? It doesn't do anything. But then when she started using tricks and like flipping it around to get momentum and stuff, like, oh, that's freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did anyone else think that it was a kind of a weird open where it was just like, again, kind of going back to I'm not sure the payoff of it, but like the interrogation of the Tony character?
Yeah, why did they start it off like
why
that?
emphasize that of all things?
I mean, that isn't, the expanded short for the Incredibles 1 DVD was the Jack Jacket, and it was the same setting. It was the dark room interrogation scene, but with the babysitter from the first movie, and then it ends with him shooting the little like sticky thing on her. Yeah. So I think just like visual bridge, that was the last piece of Incredibles media that's been created. So I think maybe there's an element of that, but also just kind of works as a like. A little bit of a not frame story, but kind of like all right, like in case you forgot, it gives them an opportunity to explain
I suppose.
what happened at the very end of the last movie in case you haven't been fresh.
Yeah.
It's literally a character telling you, here's what happened in the last 5 minutes of The
That's
Incredibles.
true.
So that way when they
Yeah.
rewind to it, it's not just, hey, the Underminer's here, let's start this fight. It gives you just a tiny bit
I
of
guess that
context.
makes sense.
And I think it's probably the most, like, thematic, like the easiest way in story to do that without just blatantly saying last time on The Incredibles.
Yeah, I guess I was
You know.
like focusing too much on the character because that character really is just very tertiary to everything.
Yeah.
So it was just like, why this character? But it makes sense. That being said, though, one of the funniest scenes, and I think I was talking to Ryan about, is when they're in the diner
Oh my god.
and when she just like starts
Shoots the water out of her nose?
Okay.
My theater was laughing for like 5 minutes straight.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to watching it again, because I missed half that dialogue. But
Me too.
also because I was dying laughing because the way they animated her face
Yeah.
and like how her eyes are watery and partially red and like
Yeah.
dripping out of her nose, I'm like, you could feel in your own face how
Yeah.
painful that is
Yeah.
because you've been there. And it's just like, it's so grossly accurate
Yeah.
to shooting soda out of your face.
It's such a contrast to the rest of the film. Like they threw that scene in there,
Mhm.
and it was well done.
And it's great too because again about family dynamic and then like the teen adolescence thing. It's like,
Yeah.
what's the worst situation that could happen here? What's the worst thing that could happen in this situation? Right? Like, perfect, great choice, great gross animation, very juicy.
It was very juicy. I want to ask you guys. I want to throw this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. Violet is adopted. Go. She has black hair.
Pass.
But the father and Dash have blonde hair, and the mother has red hair. How does she have black hair? And also, Jack has red hair, by the way. Why does she have black hair? Genetically, that can't happen.
she could have dyed it.
I mean, genetically.
Yeah, I'm a geneticist.
Genetically, they have
Maybe that's part of her
superpowers.
superpowers. Is she has black hair?
But that's a terrible superpower.
Well, if she is adopted, then she had her biological parents also have superpowers.
Possibly. I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the Incredibles are about family, and they could easily make that a part of the third one that she has a different father. I don't know. No one else has thought
She
about
dies
that?
it, or her mother dies it, or genetics are thrown out the window if you're a superhero.
I don't know. I just thought it might
has.
be an interesting plot element for a future film, but
Yeah, just adoption in general that I could see, or just
Yeah.
kind of that different take on a family. I had never thought of that though. I guess.
she also doesn't have any of the same facial features as her parents.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's kind of a weird thing because in animation, especially with stylized characters like this, which I do like, and I do think for the most part it works in all these Pixar films. But it is something I was thinking about because no one's really ugly in these films. Like, there's people with peculiar, like, designed faces, but no one's really ever ugly. I mean, I guess if you're making a movie, you don't want to put ugly people
Do you
in
find the
your film.
Underminer attractive?
Well, but he's like clean, right? He's very polished and clean. Everyone is just like, symmetrical and just like.
How come there were no homeless people in this crime-riddled
Well,
town?
I don't know.
Oh,
There's
I had another question. When does this take place?
Oh, I actually was talking about it with me when we were watching it. It's great. It reminds me, if I had to find a piece of media, it reminds me the most of stylistically Archer. Because
It does
it's
a little bit,
got the
for sure.
mid-century 60s, 70s,
Yes.
but they still have like really high-tech stuff when it's convenient. Like,
That's what I kind of got, and especially with Screenslaver's whole gimmick, it wouldn't really be the same if they were in the 60s. Everyone's in front of their screens. That
Right.
doesn't really resonate as well if it was in the 60s. But
well, sure.
all the technology, like all the cars and everything is, like, it doesn't need to be any one time or place, but it's very world of tomorrow.
But
yeah,
it is. It feels retro, I think, and
Yeah.
obviously intentionally, like almost like Old Spy.
Yeah, exactly. I was just kind of curious if, like, if in their mind it actually does take place in the 60s or not. Do you think they even...
No,
dated
I think it's just purely just supposed to be fantasy world, and they just
Yeah.
picked and choose the best aesthetics that they wanted, and, which is great because I think that you get the 60s kind of little Bond reminiscent, and the same with the soundtrack is very
Yes.
more, and I don't know, like the soundtrack is more spy movie than superhero movie.
Oh yeah.
And
that's-
somehow that clicks together somehow. I don't know how,
Yeah,
but
no,
it
it
works
totally
really
works.
well in the series.
Well, partly because the superhero-ness of them is somewhat secretive, right? So,
yeah. They're more like agents. Like,
Yeah.
Both the first and the second movie involve plots. In the first, it's Bob, and the second Helen, where they're like doing agent work, where they've got missions and they got to go do this covert thing. So it fits thematically. It works. It's real tasty.
Well, I have another big question.
Uh-oh.
This. Maybe I'm looking too much into this.
You are.
I am.
Sock it to me.
But this is multi-layered. But I'll kind of do my best of trying to articulate what I'm thinking here. But who is the audience for this film? And just as an audience, just as like a member of the film-going public in the last 20 years, especially our generation, are we allowed to grow up? Is this film saying that we should remain children?
Okay, let's talk about the audience first. Okay, let's split this in half first. I bought a ticket for the 7 o'clock show, and Maeve and I walked in, and it was full of screaming children. So we walked right back out, and we traded our ticket for the 9 o'clock show, and it was full of college students and people in their mid-20s. And that audience cheered at the end of the movie. So it is clearly for both of those audiences.
Yeah, I went to the 9 and I was full of college kids.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is this. Okay, so this film Incredibles 1 came out 14 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you are a 12-year-old kid watching Incredibles who was the arguably intended audience at the time, you are now a 20-something, potentially even older.
Absolutely.
But it's still a children's film, right?
Yeah. Sort of.
I guess right, and I think there's even layers of this thematically in the film. To an extent, and this is where I feel like they didn't really develop those things as much as I would have liked, but I do think there is some of it in there, and that is this idea that like we're still expected, maybe not expected, buying the entertainment, the content, the substance of what we did when we were children.
Sure.
Why should we be doing this?
What do you mean? What is the substance? Like, give me an example.
Incredibles.
Okay, so, but, I mean, we're not talking about Land Before the Time here. These are Disney films are marketed as family films. Films that people of all ages can enjoy. That doesn't mean... So, yeah, they're appealing to somewhat lowest common denominator, right? They're not hitting any subject very deep, right? And that is kind of what Disney does, right? I mean, they're going to have a good message.
They're trying to cast a wide net.
Yeah, they're going to cast a wide net.
I guess my point is that, okay, if you were... the characters have not aged. Right? 15, the amount of time has passed since the first film came out as the same amount of time as in the film world when superheroes were legal.
Mm-hmm.
They can't, as filmmakers, they can't be that dissonance. They have to be aware of that.
You know,
right?
Brad Bird did an interview, and he said, when we were talking about what this movie should be, we thought about doing a time jump, and then I said, nah, that's dumb, let's not. So... But
they have, in effect, they have done a time jump.
But what?
Because they didn't do a time jump, in a sense, they have done a time jump, right? Like it's one thing, like if you're The Simpsons or Family Guy, you're around 20 years, but that's an adult audience, right? I think, whether this is right or wrong, I think collectively as a culture, we think you mature when you reach a certain age, you're an adult, your tastes are going to be that for the remainder of your adulthood, more or less. But as a child, right, most children's TV shows are only ever around for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. I mean, it's no coincidence that Korra was 4 years. About the length of time you're a teenager. Avatar, lesser, 3... Like, because kids aren't kids. It's not a permanent thing. But by extending these things, well, bring that back. They need to make a sequel to this. I loved it as a kid. Like... Are they stunting our growth? Like, shouldn't our taste be maturing? And I'm presenting this in the very most negative way possible. There's probably a better way to to present these ideas. But do you kind of get what I'm saying here? That it even pertains to the thematic element of the film where Weaver, the brother, what's his name? Deaver? Whatever. Winston Deaver. Right? He's a child. He's expecting someone to save him. He needs superheroes to save him. Right? And they kind of touch on that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like that's what I said. I'm maybe looking too far into it, but to me, it's just like it's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea, but this is the business of what this company is selling. I mean, it's kind of it's like you're saying, are they stunting our growth? Well, does Disney have a responsibility to present alternative entertainment for us to match where we're at in our lives? No, we look up to other places for that.
I guess what I'm saying is this: I think in previous generations. And this is only historically, so this is an academic thing. I can't obviously say what it was like in the 60s. I don't know. But they didn't come out with Snow White 2 in the 80s. Right? They came out with new things. They're like, well, the people who like Snow White, they're adult, and they'll watch it if they want to watch it, but we don't need to appeal to the same IP anymore. will create new content.
No, hold on. Okay, so you're right. Maybe in the first 50 Disney animated films, they probably didn't have a sequel on any of those. But, I mean, it's not too far of a stretch to say that Cinderella is a sequel to Snow White, that Sleeping Beauty is a sequel to Cinderella. You know,
Well,
these are
thematically
all
and
essentially-
storytelling, but
Exactly.
they're not sequels. There's a
No,
difference.
they're not. They're not. And I think, I don't know that sequels are indicative of this whole harkening back to the same childhood elements, because I think you can create another film with a different title that is the same film, right?
Yeah, why didn't they do that then?
Well, I actually completely agree with you. And I think that's one problem I have with Pixar right now, is that for the first decade of their career, history, they created some original content in a environment that is so flooded with other content that's just recycling the same old material. And they came out with some very fresh stuff for us.
They did. They were on a streak for a while. You had, it wasn't just looking forward to like the quality, but it was looking forward to the next new thing. You had like, Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., Up,
Bugs
Wall-E,
Life,
all of
Toy
those,
Story,
all
like
of
the
those,
original.
all of those things were so Ratatouille,
original,
right?
fresh.
And now they're a little
now-
too hung up on the sequels,
Right, and that was why, even when, I think the first sequel was Toy Story 2, correct?
Yeah, and that was the third movie they did, but
Right, and which is why I was a little like, fine, okay, I'll give them the Toy Story trilogy. But when they did like Monsters University, I'm like, no, you guys keep moving forward. Look to the future. You guys are leading the industry. Don't fall into the same trap that...
Shrek 5 and...
Exactly, don't fall in... And that's why,
and stuff.
even Incredibles 2, as much as I love the first one, I'm like, I can't wait to see how they're gonna visually show me how all these new powers are gonna interweave and stuff like that. But I agree with you in that sense that, they are falling, they're just kind of resting on, I don't know if it's a money thing, if it's
Right.
I don't think it's
I'm not pretending to be so naive to go, why did they do this? Like,
No.
I get that. I get it. I'm just like questioning, like it's not just Pixar. I'm not just saying Disney or Pixar. I mean, it's Ninja Turtles, Transformers. We played as Transformers as kids. Like, why are they appealing to our right?
because the people who were kids in the 80s who watched Transformers are old enough to have their own kids, and they'll go, I want my kids to experience the thing I did. That's why.
I get why, but
So
I'm just saying that
Incredibles
it
is
wasn't
kind of
the
a weird-
same thing. Like, in the 80s, they weren't making adult films of 60s children's shows. They weren't making Flintstone. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there something... I'm posing a question. Is there something about our generation or the current media thing where they're like, yes, we're going to tap into this and we're just going to hit this for the rest of their lives?
Well, I think it's just an IP. I mean, they made a Flintstones movie in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's just an IP. It's just like, this has an attached name that it's a household name. We can get people to buy tickets because it has the same on the marquee. However, so I will say, though, I've heard a similar argument to the one you're making right now, or discussion topic, but it's framed in Star Wars, and I don't want to get into Star Wars.
That's true.
But I've heard that, it's Star Wars keeps trying to kind of recapture this old thing. Not even recapture, but we have this experience of the original trilogy as children, and we want to revisit and relive that experience. And it kind of goes back to the whole idea of that I think about of there's something you love so much that you want to forget it, so you can relive it for the first time all again, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a blessing and a curse, I suppose.
Yeah.
That we can't get past ourselves, maybe, and Hollywood knows it.
I definitely think it's something that they know how to exploit, right? And I guess that's where it's like, I just want to know. I just posing the question to bounce off to see if other people have considered it, if it's something that other people are aware of. And I'm not saying it in a purely cynical negative way, because obviously we're having a whole podcast that's essentially about that, right?
Right.
Yes.
I think. This is obviously something I've considered. I think where I stand here, though, and I think why I'm not quite connecting with where you're at on this viewpoint, is because, yes, I agree that that's a thing that exists, especially with our generation. I just don't know that Incredibles 2 is the prime example of it.
No, it's not.
I feel like if we're
throw it
looking
out
at this
there.
phenomenon of how we're stuck in IPs and in the past and nostalgia and all this stuff. We talked about a lot about it with Solo, and we talked about it with Ready Player One. I just don't really get that with this movie.
Well, okay, this is why I brought it up with this movie, because I think the discussion was too inescapable. That was the obvious discussion with Ready Player One and Solo.
Right.
That was they they were overtly about that. But I guess why I brought up with Incredibles 2 is because no one's talking about it like that. But to me, I was like, why not? Why are people like, we talk about fan service and so on, like, why is this not fan service? It's appealing to the exact same sensibilities in a lot of ways, right?
I suppose because maybe it just doesn't have the same legacy, but you're right, it is 14 years old, the first
That's
one.
my point. It's like,
Yeah.
it'd be one thing if it was 2 years later when, like, comes out. 3 years later, like, no, this is 14 years. This
It's so
isn't
crazy to
like,
think about
like
that way.
6-year-olds are, like, these are now
Well,
people with families and jobs. Or they're new 12-year-olds who don't have that connection with the original.
Well,
if we
they-
were
Not the same connection.
No,
And
okay,
most of them
okay.
will probably,
If we're gonna
parents
talk
will have showed them to them and
nuts
stuff.
and bolts. Pixar has wanted to make a sequel to this
Yes,
since the
I
first
get it.
one, and Brad Bird wanted to go do other things.
Yeah.
And they did not want to make a second Incredibles without Brad Bird,
Yeah.
and he wanted to get into live action. And
The
now
Mission
he's like,
Impossible
I'm over it,
ones,
Mission
yeah,
Impossible,
yeah.
all these things.
Yeah.
And then he did Tomorrowland, which flopped, and I said, okay, I guess now it's time to make
Yes.
Incredibles 2. So, I mean, in this, again, this
Yeah,
specific
there's
example,
practicalities
it's
of
not,
it.
there's the nuts and bolts, there's the Incredibles is a super popular IP, it's going to make money if we put these characters out again. This is
It's actually
There's-
funny. I assume it shows before all, but they had the little prequel beforehand, or not prequel, but the little short thing before the movie started of all the cast, and it's like we know you've been asking for it forever. So like that's what like they are all
acknowledging.
so full aware of this.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
14
I did think
years.
that was a little strange. The
right. Like
yeah.
they
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, it felt this felt weird. Like they're like, no, it's gonna be good. Trust us. Like you're like, why are you?
I mean, I already bought my ticket.
Yeah, why are you trying to
We're
convince me?
in the theater.
I'm here.
Thanks, I guess, but yeah,
You get a show. and
I gave
just-
you the money already.
Yeah. I guess maybe a last note on that is that it is easy to kind of fall into sameness, right? This is something that's comfortable, something we like. I'll pay money to go see this, and that's why I'll always favor an original in a saga. That's the first to do it. It was fresh. It was original, and I'm always, for the most part, even though I said I liked this film more than the first one, I still, if I was going to rank my top 100 films, and either of the Incredibles were going to find their way into that list, it would be the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think in that regard, if there's a movie out or there's some content that's new and original, I'm always going to bias myself intentionally and unfairly towards that content because I want to give credit and I want to not necessarily just to the artist, but also for myself, right? Because we are, like I said, we can't get past ourselves, so I have to force myself and make a special effort to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I knew that was going to be a big, heady conversation that I do think is relevant for Incredibles 2, but it's not a critique of it in specifically the film itself because ultimately I still think it's a fun, enjoyable film, right? Like,
Yeah.
and
Well, that's good, Sean, because if you didn't apologize just now, I was going to punch you in the face.
Okay, good.
Right? Obviously, you have to worry about offending me.
Cool. All right, Chris, what do you think about all that?
About what you just said.
About Chewie punching me in the face?
I like it. No.
Another.
I mean, I agree with you, Sean. I mean, I've thought about this for a long time. It's just
Like
Is
half an hour.
is that what you've been doing this whole time?
Yeah.
I've been kind of just thinking about all this stupid crap I see posted on Facebook of people from my generation. 90s was the greatest decade to grow up in, right? They're so obsessed with that thing that you don't hear freaking our parents saying, no, trust me, the 60s was the best, right?
You do hear that, though.
I never.
Well,
Because
you
I
don't hear it in
I-
that term.
I
You
see
hear
the
it in other
posts about how,
ways.
like, remember when you drank out of the hose and you could
Yeah,
go
I mean,
out on a
you're right. They don't.
hot summer day.
First of all, it's on Facebook, so
drunk while
by the very nature of the
I guess,
medium, they're not going to post it.
But
I get what you're saying, though. I like.
and then also, like, I guess people of my generation too, and later have like this bad tendency of living with their parents a lot longer. To like.
I guess that's what I was
Well, I
trying
mean,
to hint at.
the economy's in shambles now.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, that takes a little bit of the blame, but overall,
But I
it's
do
also
think
they
it
don't
plays
have
in this
that
collect-
desire to move out.
I think it's
too.
I think it's just a collective conscious of ideas. I just think it's just like what I was referring to is this idea of maturation and how that's reflected in our entertainment.
So we're a bunch of man children.
Maybe I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I do think that there are some people who are that, but that's true of everyone.
Why do you keep pointing at me when you say that?
Anyways, Incredibles 2. Bao was a 12-year-old boy, all right?
I mean,
Did that blonde woman have sex with the bow?
With the dumpling.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
so
You have to accept that.
I've been thinking about why I didn't like Incredibles 2 as much as a lot of people probably do. And I feel like because for a Pixar film, it's so lacking in subtlety, right? And it's something that, like you were bringing up earlier, the original IPs, things like, you have the Wallies and you have the Toy Stories and stuff. Things where, I don't know, just there's more nuance to how they tell the story. Where this one, it was just a superhero story, like to me, with a bit of spy in it, right?
Well, sure,
like,
that was kind of what Sean said. It just felt like a long episode. That wasn't.
Yeah, like everything's so in your face.
I mean,
and stuff
I
like
guess
that.
that's everything doesn't have to be, a magnum opus of just the blah blah blah. But I won't count it against them. But I do think that, to me, is that there was some of it there, but it just never fully developed. Like whereas like I'd almost rather have them just go full on superheroes that they don't need the subtle message stuff. Or if you're gonna do that, then go all in with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I was a little bit, but ultimately that's a pretty high level criticism in terms of like nitpicking stuff, right? Like story wise, all the other stuff, everything else worked. It was entertaining. It was visually, it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a Pixar film. Doesn't even have to be said anymore, but it's still pretty amazing every time a new film comes out how, like, you don't even think about it anymore. I was just like, oh yeah, that's reality.
So what's the consequence of failure in this movie?
Which one? You mean
Injustice
for superheroes?
Injustice.
Do they die? Do the
Incredibles do.
superheroes die?
Like what?
Well, that's another thing I had an issue with. Is
Oh,
that,
yeah.
like, okay, we just legalized superheroes, but now we're gonna, if they fail, then all the superheroes are hypnotized, and now public opinion is turned back against superheroes.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
So now we have to reintroduce legislation, and who knows how long that's going to take. So it's not really...
It did have, it reminded me a bit of Civil War, too, for sure. Like,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, there was a bit of that.
But
That's a good one.
at least they tried to tackle something. I do think that it did feel like a natural kind of expansion on the first Incredibles in terms of the world building.
Yes.
I did enjoy the world building.
Yeah. Just the city and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember
No,
Minas City. I forgot what it's called.
It's like when she gets out to that promenade with the monorail. I'm like,
Yes.
whoa, we never saw something like this in the
Yeah,
first one. This looks really cool, visually appealing. You get to see like, hey, they're part of a big, vast world now
Yeah.
because of a monorail.
That's not how it finished.
No, I didn't understand that. Why were they turning it on in the first place?
Yeah, that's
I
what,
was
like, shouldn't
confused.
they, like, want to, like, where, like, I don't know.
And also, before we knew that the track wasn't finished, I'm like, the villain's plan is to make it go backwards? Oh, no! Like, I thought that was just going to be it, too. I'm like, this is hilarious.
Also, the monorail probably already designed to go backwards anyway. It's a one-way.
mono rail.
Well, all right.
Monorail. All right, well, I think that wraps up for the most part. Yeah, despite probably our heavy-handed, like, bragging on it and some crazy discussions.
Oh, yeah.
I think it
still
was
heavily recommended.
very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
Best time I've had in the movies in a long time.
Yeah.
Lots of things I don't think worked about the movie. Not perfect, but it's hecka enjoyable.
What's next up on Pixar's list?
Oh, I don't.
Good Dinosaur 2. No, I don't know.
Boy, oh boy. Planes 4. Someone looking this up? Someone Googling this?
I am.
Chris is...
It says Planes 4. No.
No!
In the meantime, me and Sean will talk about. I don't know.
We'll see which one was Chris or
Googling as
Chris.
well.
There's
We
so
get-
many movies.
We're Googling
upcoming.
things.
Toy Story 4, right.
Oh, Toy
Oh,
Story
right.
4.
And then it's just a list of dates.
With no titles.
all called Untitled Films.
Well, that's when
It's all
So
part
they're
of the same
they're making a
franchise. The
trilogy.
Untitled franchise.
They know. It's when the bombs drop. There won't be any more Pixar movies
Yes.
after that.
You have it all on your phone, all the things that people should do to thing us and do us and blah, 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 blah,
Why
blah.
don't you start that over? All right. How about I take us home here? Okay,
Tell us.
dang it.
Yeah, how about you start that over?
Okay.
If you want to reach out to us
I got
on
it.
social media, tell them how, man.
All right. So here's all the places you can find us. You can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to us on Google Play Music, Pocket Casts, or Radio Public. You can follow us on our RSS feed. If you want to find us on YouTube or the YumChunks, where you can find all of our video content, as well as any of our podcast episodes. If you want to contact us, we're at the YumChunks on Twitter. Send us a tweet if you feel like you want to. If you want to send us a direct email, we're just at yumchunks@gmail.com. Send us the good, send us the bad, send us the facts of life. Whatever you want to tell us. And, leave us some whatever. Say hi.
That's a good idea.
There you go.
We're coming up. We'll have a lot of episodes for the summer coming up. We're probably going to do a Jurassic World episode. We got an Ant-Man and Wasp. We got Comic-Con coming up. We got lots of stuff. We're probably going to do an episode on Avatar 10th Anniversary Blu-ray of Sozin's Comet. So stay tuned for all that. Oh, Vince wasn't on this episode, so if you want to know his opinion on Incredibles 2, just give him a call.
Yeah, his number is no, bad idea.
But I think that wraps it up for us. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening, staying after the credits, and we'll catch you on the flip place.
On the stinger.
The stinger.
Stay incredible.